The fog had not yet lifted from the fields around Amiens when the first shapes appeared above the horizon. To a farmhand walking the road at dawn, they looked like black arrows cutting through the pale winter sky. The air was cold enough to sting the lungs, and the engines echoed off the flat French countryside with a low, rising growl. He stopped and stared as the formation swept lower, dropping through the mist until he could make out the silhouettes of British Mosquito aircraft, twin-engine fighters known for their speed and wooden frames. They flew so low that the tops of the poplars trembled in their wake. Within seconds, they were gone, racing toward the gray stone walls of Amiens Prison. Inside the prison, it was another morning of confinement. Guards in heavy coats patrolled the yard, while political prisoners, French resistance members, and civilians accused of aiding them waited for the day to unfold. Some were scheduled for transfer to German camps in the coming days. Others were slated for execution. There had been rumors in the cells that something might happen soon, but no one dared believe it. Prison breaks were fantasies, not real possibilities. Not under German occupation, not with walls thick enough to stop artillery and a courtyard designed to funnel escapees into gunfire. But the British Air Ministry had approved an operation so daring that even the pilots chosen for it doubted whether they would survive. It was called Operation Jericho, and its objective was simple and impossible at the same time. Bomb the prison walls at rooftop height, create breaches large enough for prisoners to flee, and destroy the guards' barracks, all without killing the very people they were trying to save. The idea emerged from repeated requests by the French resistance, who feared that key members held at Amiens would soon be executed. They needed immediate intervention. The RAF had considered the risks and hesitated. Low-altitude bombing in winter weather was hazardous even without enemy fire. The prison sat in the heart of occupied territory, protected by anti-aircraft guns and German patrols. But as intelligence officers confirmed that executions were imminent, the mission was approved for February 18, 1944. That morning, as the Mosquito squadrons approached the target, the pilots tightened their throttles and dropped even lower. Some flew at 50 feet, skimming hedgerows and frozen fields. Their goal was to avoid radar and surprise the German garrison. The lead aircraft, flown by Group Captain Percy Pickard, held position behind the first wave. His job was to oversee the attack and coordinate the withdrawal. The success of the mission depended on precise timing, steady nerves, and a margin of error measured in inches. At exactly 12:01 p.m., the first bomb hit the eastern wall of Amiens Prison. People inside felt the structure shake as dust and mortar rained from the ceilings. In the courtyard, guards shouted and scrambled for cover. A second Mosquito swept overhead and released its bombs only yards from the first strike. The wall buckled, then split open in a cloud of smoke and debris. Prisoners near the breach stared, stunned, as daylight poured through the gap. The next wave of aircraft aimed for the guards' barracks. Their bombs struck the roof, igniting splintered beams and sending shrapnel across the courtyard. Flames climbed through the broken structure. The sound of gunfire crackled as German guards tried to respond, firing blindly toward the sky. Civilians in the nearby town ran into the streets, pointing upward as the Mosquitoes circled for another pass. Inside the cells, prisoners began breaking down doors and shouting to one another. Some had been locked away for months, starving and beaten, expecting only death. Now, the unthinkable was happening. They had a chance. They sprinted toward the breach, stumbling over rubble and choking on dust. Outside, resistance fighters hidden near the perimeter began guiding escapees toward safe routes, trying to move them before German reinforcements arrived. The second wave of RAF aircraft struck with the same precision as the first. This time the bombs fell along the western wall, creating another opening. Smoke from the barracks drifted across the courtyard, mingling with the winter mist. Prisoners poured through both breaches, scattering across fields and into the outskirts of Amiens. Some were shot as they ran. Others reached the cover of trees and ditches and disappeared from sight. As the attack continued, Group Captain Pickard circled in his distinctive Mosquito, watching the prison grounds below. Once he confirmed that both walls had been breached and the barracks destroyed, he signaled the withdrawal. The mission had taken minutes, but it altered the course of dozens of lives. On the return flight, Pickard's aircraft was struck by German anti-aircraft fire. Witnesses later reported seeing his Mosquito trailing smoke before it spiraled into a field and crashed. Both he and his navigator, Flight Lieutenant Bill Broadley, were killed. Their sacrifice became inseparable from the legacy of the mission. In the aftermath, German forces swept the countryside searching for escapees. Some prisoners were recaptured, others vanished into the underground networks of the resistance. Estimates vary, but roughly 255 prisoners escaped that day. Around 80 were killed during the breakout or later capture. Still, many of the targeted resistance members survived and rejoined the fight against the occupation. News of the raid spread across Europe and Allied command. To some, it was a symbol of astonishing precision and courage, a demonstration that the RAF could strike anywhere, even the heart of occupied territory, to protect those risking everything for the liberation of France. To others, it raised questions about the civilian cost, the danger to the prisoners, and the thin line separating rescue from disaster. But the intent was clear. The RAF had acted to save lives, not destroy them. For those who escaped, Operation Jericho became a personal turning point. Many described the moment the wall collapsed as a surge of hope they never expected to feel again. They remembered the confusion, the smoke, the gunfire, and the blur of bodies running toward freedom. They also remembered the pilots they never met, men who flew a wooden aircraft into the guns of occupied France so that strangers might live. Today, the story of Operation Jericho remains one of the most dramatic, low-level bombing missions in the history of the Second World War. The prison has long since fallen silent. Its walls, rebuilt after the war, stand as a reminder of the day when aircraft roared out of the clouds and tore open the boundaries of captivity. The cost was real, the risk unimaginable. But to those who survived because of it, the mission was not an act of destruction. It was a lifeline thrown from the sky. Thank you for listening to Last Post History. Subscribe for more true stories from the world at war.